Item 3 of the 11th Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development will commence shortly. May I please ask all to take their seats? Distinguished delegates, Agenda Item 3 of the 11th Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development will commence shortly. May I please ask all to take their seats? Distinguished delegates, Agenda Item 3 of the 11th Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development will commence shortly. May I please ask all to take their seats?
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, a very good morning. Welcome to day 2 of the 11th Asia Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development. This morning, we will proceed as indicated in the program with agenda item 3, accelerating the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development through the voluntary national reviews. The document pertinent to this session is strengthening policy coherence through voluntary national reviews to accelerate the implementation of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, ESCAP / RFSD / 2024/4. With less than 6 years to go, we need accelerated transformative action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. The 2030 Agenda still provides the best roadmap out of the multiple compelling crises we are facing globally, but we are fast running out of time to correct course. The role played by the voluntary national reviews, VNRs, in the follow-up and review architecture is more critical than ever. With countries preparing their second, third, or even fourth report, we understand the impact the reviews can make, especially when integrated in the policy cycle. The objective of the agenda item is therefore to facilitate exchange of good practices and lessons on how member states and stakeholders are utilizing the voluntary national review process to strengthen both vertical and horizontal policy integration. Through an interactive panel, the agenda item aims to stimulate discussion on how to promote the holistic enabling policy environment aimed at accelerating progress across development agendas. To facilitate the discussions under the agenda item, we are honored to have the support of Ms. Carla Hersey, UN Resident Coordinator in Bhutan, who will moderate the panel discussion. It is my pleasure now to invite the moderator and the speakers to the stage.
Okay. Good morning. Okay. Good morning, colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here today and an honor to discuss the NVRs that are coming up. As you know, in 2024, 11 countries in the region have been preparing for the VNR. Armenia, Azerbaijan, Federated States of Micronesia, Georgia, Islamic Republic of Iran, Laos, PDR, Nepal, Palau, Samoa, Solomon Islands, and Vanuatu. So while we have some first-timers, the Islamic Republic of Iran will be presenting for the first time, Azerbaijan will be presenting for the fourth, and the remaining countries are doing their second or third presentations. I think it's really important for us to note that the second generation of VNRs plays a really critical part in allowing us to follow up and to review these processes and to exchange information and to continue to learn from one another. It will also facilitate the integration of the SDGs into policy making and planning processes and accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. So today we have a very distinguished panel with us. Let me introduce them, and then I will pose the first round of questions this morning. And then I will turn it over to the resident coordinators who are also with us today to share their reflections and any follow-up questions they might have. So first we have Mrs. Norlise Hamish. She is the Chief Executive of Malaysia's Ministry of Housing and Local Governance. So most welcome. Okay. We also have Mr. Hussein Husanov, who's the Secretary of the National Coordination Council on Sustainable Development in Azerbaijan. So most welcome to you. We have Juliet Hakwa, who is the head of Monitoring and Evaluation Unit, the Department of Strategic Policy and Planning and Aid Coordination Unit, Office of the Prime Minister, Vanuatu. So most welcome to you as well. We also have with us today Mr. Dayasagar Shutta. He's the Executive Director, National Campaign for Sustainable Development in Nepal. Most welcome. And finally, we also have Vilna Remenu, who is a member and advisor of the Palau Association of NGOs for Palau. She kindly allows us to call her Lani. So most welcome to you as well. So as we get started, I'm going to pose my first question to Norlisa. No? All right. So Malaysia will be conducting its third VNR in 2025. What are your reflections on the complementarities among voluntary local reviews and the VNR process, and how the local reviews can leverage and strengthen vertical policy coherence and reflect on what is happening on the ground? How can we enhance collaboration among national, local governance, and in the spirit of embracing a whole of government approach? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carla, for the question. Thank you for having me here. A very good morning to everyone. I think the key word that you asked is complementarities. Yeah? So this is where especially between the VNR and the VLR, how align or how do they complement one another? Firstly, the implementation of SDGs has always initially been a national-led initiative. I think even for Malaysia, it was the same. And in doing so, I truly believe that, national governments are not just using the SDGs as a compass for their way forward in terms of the global commitment. However, what's most important is that they need to have their own sustainable development policies, plans, as well as programs. Now, in Malaysia, SDGs implementation started the time when we ratified the document, and it's actually done in 3 phases, which is aligned to our 5-year Malaysia plan, which is an economic blueprint, and to reach 2030, it will be undertaken in our 11, 12, and 13 Malaysia plan. Now, this is very crucial because the economic blueprint is actually our driver for growth and development in the country. And it has been very instrumental in also setting the sustainable development pathway for the country. So in localization efforts, where in the phase 2 of our work now, we are in our phase 2, we very much want to focus on localization. And this is when we focus on the importance of other stakeholders being involved, local governments, subnational governments, even private sectors and community levels being involved in the whole process of SDGs implementation. So you can say that it's not just a whole of government that we're looking at, but we're also looking at whole of society kind of an approach. So we've actually conducted our VNR in 2017, 2021, and the next one in 2025. And hopefully it's a 4-year document, and the last one will be in 2029. And what happened next was that in 2020, we started a Malaysia SDG Cities program, a very bottom-up kind of a process where we wanted to also bring cities into not only the discussion, but also in the reporting of the Sustainable Development Goals programs. So I think this is when you see that the whole element of policy coherence starting to be put in place, where the successful implementation of SDG is a result of how policies are being integrated, not only at the local level, but also how it can escalate upwards. So for Malaysia, this is very crucial, and I believe there's many countries just like us. We have a 3-tier government system, and because of that, policy coherence and integration is very crucial because national policies needs to be adopted at the subnational level as well as at the local level. So any form of VLR process that we can use actually as a tool for integration. And this is where cooperation and interdependencies between different policy sectors become more relevant. And by doing the VLR, we also create new means and instruments to mainstream the SDGs. And of course, this helps to enhance the sustainability competencies. Now, you might say that the VLR is actually a mirror of the VNR. Although it is not an official, it's not officially recognized as a review process of the SDGs, it is actually becoming very, very popular, not only in Malaysia, but also in many parts of the world. And I think this is the integration approach that is very important. And to date, we have undertaken about 62 cities in Malaysia doing their VLR, which is about 40% of our total local governments. And the feedbacks that we get from the VLR process is that it helps the locals to set their priorities and policy alignments with the SDGs. It also helps in terms of integration with sustainable development and provide more evidence base in terms of how it is being monitored. So I think this is where the VLR, especially with high urbanization rate that's happening, in Malaysia is about 78%, and I think even in Asia Pacific we have crossed the 50%. VLRs are becoming more and more relevant, and they can help the cities to actually localize the SDGs. And it is said that 1/3 of the SDG targets are actually only possible at the local level to be achieved. And for Malaysia, about 33% are under the domain of local government. And while another 32% are highly dependent on various agencies and organizations and also interministerial cooperation. So it's very obvious, I think, the targets itself require policy coherence and the integration workforce. So I think we are the first region, Asia Pacific, that actually have come up with preparation guidelines to prepare the VLR, which is undertaken by ESCAP together with PPSU. And Malaysia is also now undertaking the national blueprint for SDG 11 in collaboration with ESCAP. And I think these two documents will be very, very important as to how we bridge the gap between what work that is being done at the local level that can be escalated up to the VNR. And we hope with the third output of our VNR next year, it will be the first time where we will be seeing this integration happens in a much, much more integrated manner. So I think, like I mentioned just now, it's very important that when we talk about this cohesiveness between the two process, engaging the community is actually the most different between the first process and the second process. And this is where the engagement will give you different perspectives, different needs, and probably different gaps as well. And also probably different perspectives on whether or not the SDGs are being fulfilled at the local level. So yeah, I think I should pause here for now, and I hope that this is where we truly feel that the VNR cannot be a standalone process. It does require VNRs for it to be very comprehensive. Thank you.
No, thanks very much, Nolise, for that. I think it was a terrific way for us to get started, and I really appreciated linking the importance of the local level being connected to the national level, that they aren't separate, and that coherent and comprehensive policy is required to see that through. So thank you so much. We're going to move on now to Hussein. So welcome again. The question that we have for you today is that Azerbaijan has been a VNR champion in the region, and now you're going on your fourth review. So how can this NVR process be leveraged to strengthen policy coherence, particularly in landlocked countries? And how can you use these recommendations, and how have you used them in the past for policy making and supporting policy integration? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carla. First of all, I would like to greet everyone and to thanks to our ESCAP friends for inviting us to be a panelist in such important topic, which voluntary national reviews, which is supportive tools for fostering actually sustainable development goals implementation. Yes, you mentioned about the champion. I think to be a VNR champion, it's some kind of honor, but at the same time, this is responsibility. Because every time countries and international organizations, they are waiting some new things which you are going to share with international communities to post the VNR. I think, yeah, VNR, we by using the VNR, we can actually foster the collaboration and sharing best practices, as you mentioned, we discussed already, and identifying areas of improvement for across various sectors of sustainable development goals. At the same time, I think we in our full international reviews, it's not just illustrating some numbers, statistics about the trends of sustainability in the country. At the same time, it should show the responsibility of the countries in terms of implementation of sustainable development goals through the policy support and policy tools, not only in the country, but in entire region. If we look the institutional part of VNR reporting in our country, we had conducted three voluntary national reviews starting 2017. The first voluntary national review, it was the initial process of reporting, and it covered more actually on institutional mechanism of implementation of sustainable development goals, and within three principles of sustainability, leaving no one behind. Yesterday also we discussed leaving no one behind principle, which plays still crucial and important role in engagement of all stakeholders in society to the process, integrated approach process, which achieving one SDGs, it's not enough to achieve one SDGs, you need to achieve all SDGs from the perspective of multidimensional poverty, as an example. So in a second VNR, we concentrated more on integration process of SDGs into the national plans and commitment, because without integration process, you cannot integrate the principle of sustainable development goals into your policy actions. So up to starting from 2017 up to 2023, more than 40 state programs, action plans, and strategies integrated into the prioritized sustainable development goals in terms of supporting of policies regarding the SDG implementation. The third VNR, actually, we concentrated more on, it's, I think, known for everyone, it was about the COVID process, because the theme of HLPF during that period of time was more resilient societies to combat with crisis related from COVID-19, and how the reaction of governments, how the reaction of societies to this process, and it covered more financing of, let's say, different period of crises. Yes, the fourth one we will submit in 2025, and just I would like to recommend from our cross-cutting analysis for last three VNRs, which can be leveraged, like enhanced policy coherence for least developed countries. First of all, I think this is evolving priorities and responsive policies, because Azerbaijan VNRs actually reflected consisting of priorities, at the same time aligning with global shifts and local exogenous. And this is initial focus of eradicating poverty. The first, let's say, an important goal is eradicating poverty, and people ensuring inclusivity and equality among nations in the country and in the region. The second one, I think we should focus on inclusive decision making and stakeholder engagement, which VNRs, it's not showing only position of government, it shows the position of whole societies in the state. It can be engagement of NGOs, civil society, business community, youth and international organization on SDG, emphasize a collaborative let's say, participatory approach should be a central element of VNRs. The third one, this is resilience in the face of global challenges. As I mentioned this, the detailed responses to COVID-19 during 2021 VNR, this is exemplifies actually Azerbaijan's resilience to the shocks, and government like swift and substantial support program in terms of both in a national and globally. At the same time, this is like showcase of commitment to mitigating the pandemic impact in the country. And the last one, this is progress monitoring and institutional strengthening, because over the years of VNR, the importance of data-driven decision-making and progress monitoring play a crucial role in reporting of VNR. And yesterday and the day before yesterday, we had a chance with VNR giving countries to have a workshop, and during workshop we already discussed how the data is important. And from our perspective, we think that the data collection and to have a disaggregated data should not be based only when we are going to submit a VNR. It should be based a yearly basis, and we should establish an institutional mechanism on data collection, and VNR should be only extracting some data and policy from the yearly based report to show it to international community. I think I can stop here. Thank you.
No, thanks very much, Hussein. I think that was excellent. And again, I think it was really important because we're still continuing to see the continuum of where we've come from when we started the VNRs to where we are now, not only taking into consideration the local level and national, but also really moving into let's not leave anybody behind. And how can we do that? We need to integrate sustainable development into policy so that we have that foundation. And I really liked your point on inclusive decision making. It is now a whole of society. We don't even need to compartmentalize the groups that we need to bring into the process. It is all of us. So thank you for those, for that. So Juliet, Hakwa, let's go ahead and move on to you. Vanuatu is preparing for their second VNR, which will be the first one after graduation from least developed country category in 2020. How can the VNR process be leveraged to strengthen policy coherence, particularly for small island developing countries? Please elaborate on how recommendations stemming from the past VNRs have informed policy making and supported a more coherent approach to policy making, in line with other development agendas, for instance, in the context of the LDC graduation. And we know that this is a big question for many, many countries that are going through this process. So we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hello, bonjour. I'd like to acknowledge the organizers, and Carla, thank you for the question. So our VNR theme for 2024 is around increasing resilience through strengthening our decentralization processes. And like many other Pacific SIDS, we face ongoing climatic and natural disaster events. So when we had a chance to review our first VNR outcomes, we reflected on some of the challenges and many of the findings that we highlighted and how they relate back to our sustainable development aspirations. And it also gave us that opportunity to kind of refocus strategically on what we see, what we see in terms of our development strategically for the future, but also in more practical terms with the second VNR, what resilience and what sustainable development actually means for Vanuatu and for Pacific SIDS. I think VNRs are quite useful because we're discussing policy coherence, and there's probably three key areas that I'd like to reflect on today. So firstly, in terms of identifying gaps and inconsistencies with regards to policies and making adjustments for them. Because the VNRs require review across all 17 SDGs, it actually gives countries the chance to highlight some areas or policies within the sectors where they might be hindering progress towards particular SDGs. And it also gives us the opportunity to identify areas where we could strengthen policies or we could review them so that they come more in line, so that we're able to have a more integrated approach towards SDG achievement. The second point I'd like to make is around the promoting of multi-stakeholder dialogue, which many of my colleagues have already alluded to. Because the preparation for VNRs, it involves a lot of stakeholder engagement, we see that that actually really adds value to the process. It brings a lot of diverse voices to the table. It also promotes a mutual understanding of what some of the challenges or the opportunities for improvements are. And we hope that it also enables a more coherent and inclusive policy space where we can share ideas together. To be honest, we have a lot of stakeholders that are implementing SDGs every day at the local level in our communities. We have a lot of community and local small and medium enterprises and businesses in the private sector. And so through this kind of process with the VNR, we can take stock of what kind of government policies we have in place and review them. And so in Vanuatu, we've recently come up with a PPP policy, which looks at a framework around how we better support SMEs to actually implement as key drivers towards SDGs. And the last point before I stop is around collaborating with new development priorities and platforms. So Carla, you mentioned the LDCs. So platforms like the LDC graduation strategy can identify specific challenges and opportunities for vulnerable nations such as Pacific SIDS like Vanuatu. And so we look at those sorts of platforms as the opportunity to share our experiences and look at some of the best practices from these platforms to accelerate SDG implementation. And for us in Vanuatu, that means it's allowed us a greater focus around key issues like decentralization and climate resilience, and that's part of our second VNR. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliet, and thanks for your reflections and giving your insights on the graduation and how that is also now moving you forward to be thinking about the engagement and where the added value is, the extended stakeholder consultations. People always say, but it takes so much time and money, but coordination is all about time. And if we don't do that, we don't have the buy-in to make anything sustainable. So congratulations to you. So next we're going to move on to Mr. Dayasagar Shetta. And again, thank you very much for joining us today. So Nepal is preparing its third NVR this year, and it's expected to graduate from the LDC category in 2026. How do you see the role of civil society in shaping and supporting the alignment among development agendas, and how can we improve the engagement of civil society organizations in policy making? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla, for the question. Just I want to highlight how civil society organizations are contributing in different development agendas, global development agendas. First, I want to say that the civil society organizations, particularly, they are contributing in raising the awareness and communications of the different global agendas, such as 2030 agenda, climate agreement, new urban agenda, Addis Ababa action agenda, different sectoral development agendas, and they are also actively contributing in international human rights laws. And they are also contributing in capacity development by organizing different trainings, workshops, and different events. And they are also contributing in networking among the civil society organizations and building coalitions by sector or by different themes inside the country. And they are also developing their own positions and the position papers so that they can advocate at the different levels from local level to the global level. And they are also being involved in policy research, studies, monitoring, and they are also playing the watchdog role in the country so that the duty bearers can be made accountable and responsible. And they are also, participating and contributing in the implementation of the different global agendas regarding how to improve the engagement of the civil society organization in the policy making. Obviously, the civil society is very diverse, but the state or the duty bearers, they need to recognize the diversity of the civil society and the civil society organizations, and we need to increase the capacity of the citizen and the civil society organization, particularly of poor, women, marginalized, excluded, and vulnerable communities. And we also need to enhance the capacity, particularly those organizations who are working at the grassroots level, and the CBOs, community-based organization, and we have also different social and the people's movement, different campaigns from the civil society. We have to recognize those movements as well, and we need to fully recognize the roles and the contribution of the civil society organization, particularly by political society. And the next, my recommendation is we need to build the trust with each other and the respect the principle of the true partnership. And next, I want to recommend that we need to encourage the civil society and people's organization, from local level to national level, and encourage them, and promote them to participate in the decision-making process. And the next, we also need to go beyond the NGOs, because civil society is very diverse, and we need to, we can also, adopt the concept of measures, what has been adopted by the United Nations. And the next, we need to establish the formal inclusive, mechanism to ensure the meaningful partnerships of the civil society organization. And to improve the engagement of the CSOs, we need to, build the conducive enabling environment, both legal environment as well as operational environment. We need to ensure the civic freedoms, which is, clearly stipulated by our constitutions. For instance, right to association, expression of assembly, access to fund, and internet freedom, a right to information. This freedom should be secured at the inside the country at different levels. And we also need to incorporate the voices and the demands of the people in the policies and the programs. And my last suggestion is that the country needs to enter into the open government partnership. That is also the one good movement globally, which is going on globally. Yeah, these are some points I want to highlight here. By those means, we can improve the participation and the role of civil society organizations in our country. Thank you.
Dai Sagar, thank you so much for that intervention and for sharing, and also for reminding us how important it is to actually have legal mechanisms in countries for CSO engagement so that those voices are heard and that they are actually incorporated. Okay, so we are now going to move on to Dilani Lani. Thank you again for joining us. So Palau is doing their second VNR this year. A stronger collaboration among government and civil society can help to collect data and evidence on groups furthest behind and support overall policy coherence. How can we improve the engagement of vulnerable groups in the VNR process? Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. You can see that I come from the vulnerable groups. It's very obvious. But being in this space for quite a while, for those who know me, it's been so long. But I think it's a time, and Daya has mentioned quite a few points, but I think it's time for us to assess ourselves, where we are, how do we improve ourselves. We keep saying inclusion, inclusive, vulnerable groups, but we need to understand them. We need to unpack who are vulnerable groups. What do we mean by inclusion?
Okay, so that's the first one. Second one is, of course, we keep saying capacity building, but capacity building, they need to be tailored. They need to be localized, simple, and focused so that people in the community will have ownership, they'll be trained, and they'll be resourced and be able to join the movement. Another point I want to say, we say meaningful engagement is important, but we need to go beyond tokenism. Of all the times coming here to Bangkok and being in this space for nearly 2 decades of my life, it's just something that we need to go beyond tokenism. There's no better time than now. We need to step out of our comfort zone. We need to be innovative. We need to mobilize our resources and ensure that we go beyond inclusion. Inclusion brings us to the table, but where is equity? We need to ensure that the voices of marginalized groups, the vulnerable groups, who are they? They need to be heard and they need to be fully engaged in the movement so that we can ensure that the vulnerable groups are inclusive, equitable, sustainable, and resilient. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Lani. I think that that was actually very relevant and quite powerful. And what I reflect on is a time when we thought there was just going to be 2 VNRs per member state, and we now see a proliferation because they are helpful in the thinking and the planning and looking forward. And when we're talking about leaving nobody behind, what does happen and how do we go beyond inclusion? Because it's not just a conversation that stops. We are moving into equity. So thank you so much for reminding us of that and how important it is and what it can do to enhance all the VNR processes. So on this note, I think it is time for me to turn over to our resident coordinators who are with us today. They're going to share their reflections on this conversation and perhaps pose a question as well for the panelists. We have with us today Mrs. Karima El Khoury, and she is the resident coordinator in Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei. We also have with us today Mr. Tapan Misha, who is the resident coordinator in Mongolia. Dirk Wagner is also with us, and he is the resident coordinator of 5 countries: Fiji, Solomon Islands, Tonga, Tuvalu, and Vanuatu. Please excuse my pronunciation. I'm still learning, yeah? And we also have Pauline Timis with us, and she is the resident coordinator in Vietnam. So I'm mindful of time. We do need to start keeping our interventions to, say, 3 minutes. And try to be as concise as possible, both for the RCs who will be sharing their reflections and possibly questions, but also for the responses from the panel. So if we could, perhaps we can start with Karima. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carla. Good morning, everyone, distinguished delegates and participants. Thank you for inviting us to be part of this panel. As we have heard and seen over the past 8 years, voluntary national reviews have been crucial to assess a country's progress towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. They have served as a comprehensive evaluation tool that provides insights on the successes, the challenges, the gaps in SDG implementation. VNRs, we have seen, have facilitated priority setting by identifying those areas where efforts need to be intensified or redirected for the acceleration of progress. We have seen VNRs through different generations of VNRs now for 8 years, how the process and the outputs have gained robustness. The first generation was not as good as the second, and definitely as the years progress, we are seeing that quality improving, but also the meaningfulness of the VNRs also gaining more importance. The process has enabled countries to engage in inclusive dialogue with various stakeholders. We also saw over the years how civil society and other stakeholders were not really part of the process, parliaments, for instance. But then as the years went by, there was more of that ownership building up, civil society, academia, private sector, and that collaboration and ownership has really increased. VNRs help in strategic planning, and we have heard from Ms. Norliza how that is happening in Malaysia. But I want to focus, if you allow me in the last minute, on the post-VNR phase and what happens after we come back from New York. And for that, I think it's important, and that would be a tip, as I was asked to also provide. The tip is to basically try to plan the post-VNR phase as part of the VNR itself. What are we going to do after we come back from the HLPF is a very important question. Whether we're planning to go on the national implementation and follow up and review, or at the subnational and local level. That could include the implementation plans, being rolled out, capacity building to see how we're going to address different, areas of gaps, monitoring and evaluation, establishing other mechanisms, as we saw with VLRs, for instance, resource mobilization. VNRs are costly, but the implementation of the 2030 agenda is very expensive to start with. So that's also an area where some work can happen. Very quickly on building the partnership, learning and exchange. Some, stakeholders have a lot to share and should be given a space to also provide some of those lessons learned and from their participation perhaps in previous cycles. We have also seen another pattern is that the VNR sometimes have given way to annual reporting. Some countries don't report just every 3 or 4 years for the VNRs, but they do it every year, not to publish it or report it to the HLPF, but as an annual exercise of monitoring and review. I will stop here and thank you again for the opportunity.
Thanks very much, Karima. I also, the list of RCs with us today is very long, and so I did miss Ms. Pumi Belongon. She is the RC in Timor-Leste. She will also be sharing her reflections and a question. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Karima. Thank you for your reflection, and I think you sum it up quite well as well. Trying to put how to integrate everything. And I think what's very crucial is that, the whole process needs to be sustainable from the very beginning. And I think that's when we undertake our VLR process, we make sure that at the, as much as possible to bring as many stakeholders as, into the discussion. So, I share your concern on, whether we understand what inclusivity is all about. And I can tell you that we will not be able to bring everyone. We always will be missing someone, And because actually the 17 SDGs is quite a lot. The 169 targets are huge list actually. So when we do a mapping list, we always find out that, what the people think and what the government is thinking is also never aligned. So sometimes aspirations and needs are very different. But what's very important in the whole thing is not the VLR. It's actually the post-VLR, as you mentioned correctly. And for Malaysia, we focus on the SDG roadmap. We want cities to actually plan what is their action plan. You've spoken, you've asked, you've inquired, you've prioritized, but what is actually your plan of action? So that's why in the Malaysia SDG program, the output is actually a roadmap. And the VLR is something that we encourage them to do at any time. They can progressively report, on either on 1 or 2 SDGs or all of it. But what's most important for us is what are their priorities and what are their actions. And in many situations, after doing about 62, we find that it's very different for rural local governments compared to urban local governments. SDG 1, 2, 3, 4 are more dominant in rural local governments compared to the urban ones. So I think when these are being differentiated, then the local actions are more, targeted. And I think this is where the post-VLR becomes very important. So yes, I concur with you, and I think that's where we should be focusing on. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you both for your reflections and interventions there. Most appreciated. Can we please turn over next to Tepan for your reflections? Thank you.
Thank you, Carla, and thank you to this very inspiring panel for the wonderful insights you're providing, and especially Hussein, your narration about the expertise that Azerbaijan has already got, being the fourth, going for the fourth review. You've really talked about the wonderful 4 areas that you talked about, right from inclusive decision making towards institutional strengthening, and I think and everything in between is really amazing. From a Mongolia perspective, I would like to share that we last year did a extremely detailed analysis, and we looked at all the facets together, and also we were encouraged by the opportunity that we had from ESCAP to go on a twinning exercise, and together with 3 countries, with Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, Mongolia, we did this together to learn lessons from each other and see how we can enhance the quality of the VNRs. And as a result, what happened is that we not only went deeper, we looked at things that were not looked at earlier, but also what we did is that we went to areas that were not really touched upon. Mongolia has a unique population of 3.45 million people, which is half of them are in the capital city, and the regional development has not been prioritized because all the center of attention is in the capital. We've now made regional development as a huge priority as a result of the VNR. And what we've done is that we've had a plan to use the VNR for the SDG summit, looking at the national commitments and the SDG accelerators. We've identified 12 accelerators, including the 6 transitions and the 4 engine rooms and all the facets together, and use this very meaningfully. So that's something that I would like to highlight, that from Mongolia's perspective, using the VNR as a tool for not just analysis and reporting, but deeper in terms of institutional changes and the focus of the government's priorities in terms of larger development issues and challenges. So my question to you, Hussein, is that Azerbaijan is a champion, and you've done it 4th time now, and also we have a commonality of a landlocked country. And how are you planning to take on the South-South and triangular cooperation to leverage peer learning to enhance policy integration? That's the first question. The second question is that how are you planning to utilize the VNR analysis to identify the accelerators for achieving the SDGs along with your national priorities? And maybe that's something I'd like to hear from you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tapan, for your question. I think just a couple of words about the support of RC offices as a country. I think RC offices play an important role in fostering all the UN agencies' collaborative support to the implementation of the SDGs in the country. And we have also very effective resident coordinator office in Azerbaijan, which is supporting and play an umbrella role in supporting of governments through different UN agencies. So yeah, VNR in last actually during the SDG summit, in last report of Secretary General, he said that only 15% of SDGs are on track. We still have 85% of SDGs which we are facing with difficult problems. Some of them are in halfway, some of them are in track. So I think by using partnership, we can foster the process of implementation of SDGs in the country, and twinning project, which is conducting currently by ESCAP, can be a crucial role in sharing experience, not only as a technical part of VNR writing process, but it's only sharing experience, a best ways of implementation of sustainable development goals, and to fill the gaps in implementation process. I think the main idea here, I can actually group this partnership. So first one is this knowledge exchange. Knowledge exchange is in terms of South-South and triangular cooperation, as you mentioned. This is facilitating exchange of knowledge to expertise the best practices between facing similar development challenges in the region. And by learning from each other's success and failure, like Azerbaijan and Lao PDR can identify an innovative solution and approaches to policy integration across various sectors of, let's say, SDG implementation. The second one, I think we can use this as building capacities, because each country have own, let's say, approaches, even VNR writing process, even integration of SDGs into the national plans, and even how they can fill the gap on different sector of SDGs. And probably during that capacity building process, we will concentrate more on financing of SDGs and how to fill the gaps in financing process, because in last workshop I also mentioned about the gap which we have according to Addis Ababa Action Plan. Before the COVID-19, the gap was yearly based 2.5 trillion USD. After the COVID-19, OECD calculated that this gap is around 4 trillion USD, but in last calculation of different international organizations, the gap even it's about 7 trillion USD. In last COP28, we heard that even in climate finance gap, it reached to around 7 trillion. And climate is just one direction of sustainable development goals. We can see that gap is really huge, and we need a collaborative approach in filling the gap in financing of SDGs through different way. I mean, engagement of stakeholders from the private sector perspective, from domestic resource mobilization. And I think the next one, this is kind of investing in human development as well, human capital as well, because by sharing knowledge, you can have more expertise in the field of sustainability. And this is kind of enhance the ability of design, implement, evaluate policies, and promote development and inclusive growth process in the country. And the last point I would like to mention is peer review mechanism. This is kind of establishing a peer review mechanism allows countries to assess, evaluate each other's policy frameworks first, performance indicator in terms of data, and implementation strategies, how they integrate different policies into the national strategies, because each countries have their own medium-term and long-term strategies for implementation of different social economic policies, which should be integrated into the sustainable development goals perspective. I think the last point I would like to point this is strengths and partnership. As I mentioned, international partnership plays a crucial role here. Azerbaijan and Lao can mobilize resources, promote knowledge sharing platforms, at the same time can catalyze collective actions to address the development challenges and achieve common goals for both countries. I think I covered a little bit your question, Tapan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both very much for your reflections and for the interventions. Again, mindful of time, we'll have to keep moving on. And I'd like to invite Dirk to kindly share his reflections and questions, if any. Thank you.
Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished panelists and delegates. It's my pleasure here in the morning to pose a question, but maybe let me start with sharing a lesson learned from the VNR process in Fiji. In the 2023 VNR process in Fiji, the process was used to further build and strengthen more robust statistical systems and processes, which are at the very core of any VNR. Lack of or weak data is one of the main reasons why progress cannot be sufficiently or not at all measured towards SDG target achievement. The SDG unit of the Ministry of Finance, Strategic Planning, National Development and Statistics of Fiji established and coordinated a core team to lead the VNR process, supported by the UN, which held wide national and subnational consultations within government, civil society and the private sector. Significant improvements were made in statistics for the VNR 2023, and we saw improved reporting mechanisms also compared to Fiji's first report, which was published in 2019. The 2023 Fiji VNR is a great example of leveraging the report to further strengthen existing systems, particularly concerning data, statistics, and monitoring. And therefore, I would like to urge all that you're using the VNR process to enhance your capacities in your statistical and data systems so that it has multiplier impacts on future government analytics. We heard already before from the delegate from Vanuatu that reliable data and statistics are essential also to identify and close policy gaps, as highlighted. To this end, the UN stands, of course, in the Pacific ready to support you. I would like to turn now to my question, which I would like to direct to Ms. Juliet Hakwa from Vanuatu. Financing sustainable development and the attainment of SDGs is one of the challenges identified through analysis of dozens of VNRs presented over the years. Could you please share your insights from Vanuatu on how the government has been approaching and designing the financing of the 2030 Agenda, including through integrated national financing frameworks? And if I may, I'd like to throw in one bonus question to you, because you have graduated from the LDC status in 2020, and I'd also be interested to hear how that will be featuring in your VNR process. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Dirk. So in 2022, Vanuatu had a development finance assessment done, a DFA, and that's initial process towards setting up an INFF. And some key financing solutions were proposed in the areas of actors and actions and implementation. So I guess in terms of some of those reflections based on your question, one of the things that's really important here is that to ensure that VNRs continue to be aligned with national plans. And the reason why we stress that that should still continue is because this will ensure consistency. It also ensures that we're able to leverage, SDG implementation within existing structures and national systems. So we see platforms like the INFF really useful because they help us to mobilize resourcing, and we can also use those kinds of systems to align our financial flows with SDG implementation and priorities. So just by way of Vanuatu, how we're looking at that, well, we've been doing program budgeting for about 25 years now. And over the past few years, the National Planning Office has put a lot of emphasis and time into aligning SDG indicators all the way down to our recurrent budgeting systems. And so we're at a point where we have this discussion with our development partners, and we stress the use of coming through our financial systems and using government systems, because that will avoid duplication of M&E, as you've rightly said, but it also helps us to review systematically and strengthen our internal processes. My other colleagues today have spoken a lot about the importance of using national systems and developing and reviewing and adding and building onto those. And I mean, that principle, we've seen it in a lot of fora, including in Paris, in Busan and Accra. And so that's the principle on which we've developed our National Sustainable Development Plan. It's also echoed in our ODA policy, our National Aid Management Policy, our National Planning Framework, and our most recent National Summit in 2023. The outcomes from that summit, so we had stakeholders calling upon government to ensure that SDGs are actualized through our decentralization policy, because that will allow the almost 80% of our people that still reside in semi-rural, rural and remote islands the opportunity to determine how services and programs are developed in their communities through our provincial systems. And for us, that's a localized version of leaving no one behind. Secondly, I'd like to talk a bit about strengthening the existing M&E systems that Dirk has mentioned. As you know, VNRs do rely on national data and reporting systems to assess progress. So we do need to look more critically at how we strengthen capacities around establishing robust and reliable data collection and analysis procedures in country. So for us, we are now at a point where we're looking at how we can better support our Bureau of Statistics, but also the line ministry agencies who are responsible for a lot of that admin data that we use to report on the VNR, but also annually against our National Development Plan. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, great, Theol. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for also keeping time. We're doing very well this morning. it doesn't always happen that way, right? Pauline, may I please turn over to you for your reflections? Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to learn from the wealth of experience presented by the panel and also the delegates. I actually am very excited for a post-APFSD discussion with the delegation of Vietnam. A lot of inspiration on the financing, partnerships, and localization of SDGs that I think we can take forward. But let me share maybe 3 good lessons from the Vietnam experience when they presented their second VNR at the HLPF last year. Just 3 quick points, and maybe these already reinforce what we've heard from the panel. First, data. Strong collaboration with the National Statistics Office, optimize the use of available statistical and administrative data from line ministries and relevant agencies. Government of Vietnam also drew on other data sources, such as from UN ESCAP's regional benchmark data, to address the gaps locally in measuring the SDG progress. UN ESCAP's SDG tracker was a useful tool to visualize the SDG progress. Second, many of you have talked about engaging diverse stakeholders, and I think this was also one of the key lessons in Vietnam, because we understand that the VNR is capable to mobilize policy and action changes beyond being a tool for monitoring SDG progress. So engaging diverse stakeholders can help not only collect useful input and information for VNR preparation, but catalyze this necessary momentum for whole of society approach to accelerate the SDGs. Third good lesson, and this is last but not the least, what Vietnam did very well was working backwards and focusing on what needs to be done, what needs to accelerate the SDGs, and work backwards from there. So VNRs was a very powerful tool to recalibrate strategy and action. Vietnam focused on what needs to happen and how to strengthen the means of implementation. So data, financing, institutional mechanisms were needed to translate VNR's findings and recommendations into actions by relevant stakeholders. Actually, Vietnam was already formulating an action plan alongside the VNR itself. So that's really important. And I think this enriched the entire process and the momentum. Coming now to my question, and this is for Mr. Shrestha of Nepal. It will be no surprise that my question will be on data, because that was very much something that came up as a strong need. In many other countries in the region and beyond also are continuously facing issues of data availability for accurate reporting on their SDGs and their VNRs. I would be grateful for your insights as to what extent do you think non-traditional data, particularly citizen-generated data, can be utilized to support SDG monitoring and the VNRs for evidence-based reporting? Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline, for the question. Definitely, voluntary national review is very good opportunities for all the development actors to review the progress and to identify the action points to move forward. And VNR, when we go through the principles of the VNR should be open, transparent, inclusive, and the evidence-based as well. Before talking to the citizens-generated data, I want to highlight, the recent report published by the UN ESCAP on Asia Pacific SDG progress report, and that reports, clearly shows that in our region, only 52% indicators have sufficient data, 9.2% have no data, and 38.7% indicators have sufficient data. And unfortunately, the goal number 5 and goal number 6, which are very important goals, they are not only stand-alone goals. They are cross-cutting. They are cross-cutting goals, and all the goals, are directly linking with those 2 goals. But unfortunately, in goal 5, only 60% data indicators. In goal 5, only 16% data are available in our region. And in goal 6, only 23% of indicators, the data are available. In 202 indicators have no disaggregated data in our region. This is a very pity. So there is a huge gap, whenever, often, when we do voluntary national reviews in our country, we often face the huge data gap and availability of updated data. That is also another challenge, and access to data is another challenge, another challenge which is facing by civil society organization. And my suggestion is, we need to respect the principle of open data, because the public data is private property. It's not private property, it is public property. And regarding the disaggregated data, if we have political willingness, if we are really committed to the principle of leaving no one behind, we can generate and present disaggregated data. It is not the matter of lack of finance or lack of capacity. It is truly depends on of our political willingness. And civil society organization, academic institutions, they are also doing research studies and the surveys. They are also generating data, and they have ample knowledge and experiences and learnings. Civil society organization, they have working at the ground level, and they are very rich with qualitative data. Generally in government data, we do not find enough qualitative data. That is the challenge in our region, not only in particular country. And government must recognize citizen-generated data and data produced by university, academic institutions. They are also producing data. We can also use those data to complement the government data when we are doing voluntary national review, or when we are doing when we are reviewing the progress of our development. I have a couple of suggestions to improve the data system. We need to develop statistical capacity at national, sub-national, and the local level as well. And we need to establish integrated monitoring system and institution at national, sub-national, and the local level, not only at the national level. This is my recommendation. And civil society civil society and academic institutions and independent research institutions, organizations, they are ready to support to generate the data. I stop here.
No, thank you, Dayasagar and Pauline, for your interventions. And data has been a reoccurring subject throughout all of our conversations, and it is something that we need to bear in mind and continue to support and strengthen. So if I may, I'd like to turn over to Funmi now for her reflections and any possible questions she might have for the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. My name is Funmi Balogun, and I'm the resident coordinator in Timor-Leste. And good morning to distinguished panelists and, of course, to the participants. I would like to start by reflecting on what Ms. Lani Remegeso said about inclusivity and what exactly is it? Who are the most vulnerable groups? And I want to take that a little bit further to reflect on why do we want inclusion? I think we don't ask ourselves that question enough. And because if we go and ask ourselves the question on why do we want inclusivity and inclusion, it then gives us an opportunity to reflect a lot more around who are those who are left behind, why do we really want them, or why should they be part of the conversations we're having, and what is their role? How do they influence? Because it's not just about participation, but that we want those who are left behind to be able to influence and make sure that the policies, the laws, all of the things we're talking about, do the SDGs, the acceleration, the implementation, has an impact on the lives of those who are most left behind. So I wanted to start by reflecting on that question by Ms. Lani. Now going back, and I'll use that to give an example of what we did with the VNR in Timor-Leste, which was to speak about, we used the youth angle of inclusion, which was very unique. And how we did that when we wanted to do our second VNR review last year was to go back to independence of Timor-Leste when young children at that time did a list. They had postcards where they had aspirations about their country, what they wanted to see in a new country. So we went back to those cards and used that as a framework to develop the VNR and align to the SDGs. What were children saying 20 years ago, who are now young people? And are their aspirations being met? And how are those aligned to the SDG? And using the VNR to do that report card. What was also interesting was we were at the cusp of an elections and we will be starting a new government. I mean, one government was going to be finishing its term and a new government was going to be taking over. So that also became not just an accountability tool from young people to their government, but also a tool for an outgoing government as a handover of some sort. And that brings us again to the conversation around policy coherence. How do we ensure that when we do VNRs, they are not parallel processes, but actually form an integral part of development, of the budgeting, of the planning, of the allocation of resources of a particular government, and in this instance, a small island developing country. So those were my reflections. And also around data, we've spoken a bit about data. When we talk about capacities for data, we're also talking about disaggregation. And that brings us back again to the issue of inclusivity. What exactly are we measuring? Who are we measuring? Because the moment we aggregate all data, we lose the essence of inclusivity and those that actually need to be impacted and to be supported. Now to my question to Ms. Lani, because I've spoken about this inclusivity. What do you see coming from Palau and as a small island developing country? What do you see as the role of the civil society in cooperating with government to ensure that VNRs actually lead to better policy coherence, that they are accountability tools, but also very importantly, that they reflect, they are used to create an awareness in all communities. And those communities are able to use VNRs to hold their government accountable. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Of course, government, academia, and other global regional partners, even national organizations, they bring data. But for CSOs, we bring the people. That's the first human resource that we have. We have the human resource, and our role is actually not just to bring data. Data is just a number to us, but we bring the stories, the lives, the realities on the ground of what's actually happening at the national and local level. Of course, we say CSOs, we collaborate with the government, the different stakeholders, we bring awareness, we build the capacity of the people. But really, I would just want to give an example of what we have in the Pacific. So with all the strategies for us in the civil society, there's just so many strategies, policies, and frameworks, but how do we align them? We need to align them and understand how it links to SDG. SDG is nothing new for us. SDG is our everyday lives. So how do we link all this together? And not to mention, we have, of course, we're accountable to the people, but we have to do it with the people. Though these are strategies for the people, by the people, but we have to do it with them. Otherwise, we'll never reach that inclusion. We'll never reach that inclusivity, the world that we want. So again, CSOs really play a bigger role in all of our efforts. So let's leave them behind, and let's really strive for that LNOB. Despite we see that we'll never reach this by 2030, but it's, again, there's no time better than now. We need to think beyond SDGs. Let's just not take this as just VNR, but let's go beyond and really see on where we come in together as a region, as a nation, or as a local, and really strive for the people, by the people, and with the people. Thank you.
Now, thank you both very much for those final reflections and response. I think today's discussion has been very rich, and of course, post-COVID, it's also a privilege and an honor for all of us to be speaking to one another in person on these issues, which I also think is a bit of a theme from a lot of the VNR discussions today. Looking at data, yes, incredibly important. Where does it come from? What does it mean? How are we going to use it? But taking the perspective of, is it just about data? But having our civil society people as part of that spectrum where we have real voices at the table that we're taking into consideration is another lesson learned. And then moving forward, looking at what is inclusiveness, and really like the concept of inclusive decision making. Without that, have we really captured the local level? Have we captured those that we might leave behind? From the conversation today, you can see that we've really moved well beyond a paper exercise of this is a national program to one that brings societies along with us. And I think this is very good for our learning. And I think the next step is beyond inclusion, where's the equity? And I'd like to stop there and thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you all to the panelists, to our resident coordinators and all the member states that have joined us for this discussion. It's been very much appreciated. I will now call upon the chair to take over the session. Thank you.
Fran. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hersey, for the great moderation of the panel and for summarizing the interesting discussions that we just heard in the panel. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I am pleased to invite the distinguished delegates to intervene on agenda item 3, accelerating the implementation of the SDG of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development through the voluntary national reviews. I will open the floor to statements from delegates in the speaking order as received from the Secretariat, from both participants present in the room and connected through Zoom. I kindly remind delegates to limit their statements to no longer than 3 minutes length to allow all delegates the opportunity to speak. First, I would like to invite the distinguished delegate from Laos People's Democratic Republic to be followed by the distinguished delegate from Fiji.
Good morning, Chair. I do apologize that my head of delegations still have a bilateral meeting. So can you jump to the next speaker and then he will coming soon. Thank you.
Okay, then I would invite the distinguished delegate from Fiji, to be followed by the distinguished delegate from Indonesia.
Thank you, Chair. The Executive Secretary of ESCAP, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Government of Fiji, I'm pleased to address you today and deliver some key sentiments in relation to our theme on accelerating the implementation of 2030 Agenda through the VNR. Excellencies, the messages are valuable and they remain relevant today. And for the sake of our theme of this forum, please allow me to reiterate some of our sentiments. Firstly, although Fiji is doing considerably well in achieving the targets of 2030 Agenda, there is still an urgent need required across the country on upgrading aging infrastructure. For water infrastructure alone, the investment required to upgrade it are valued at billions. Just an example, as a planning mechanism last year, we made significant efforts to release a 10-year national infrastructure plan and revise our public sector investment plan with the aim of considering cross-cutting issues such as climate change, which has a crucial influence in the sustainability and resilience of our infrastructure in the long term. The government is fully committed to ensuring that Fiji's second VNR accurately reflects the status of the SDGs in Fiji, and there will be annual monitoring to be carried out. Fiji has been a strong advocate for the adoption of SDGs from the beginning, and we have ensured a high level of ownership of the SDGs within our country as well as in the Pacific Island countries. We are fully cognizant that our forward-moving progress in the SDG is pivotal for building resilience when taking into account our vulnerability to natural disasters, climate change, and the recent global challenges such as the pandemic and geopolitical tensions. We wish to highlight a few issues as well that we have. The coalition government is committed to achieving more SDGs because these goals enable Fiji and our people to effectively confront global challenges. We are glad to also share that we have lessons learned from our previous VNR, ensuring that this time around it aligns with our core principles of the Global 2030 Agenda. Finally, Fiji notes that the significant progress it has made in the SDG indicators, with 128 indicators having sufficient data compared to the Pacific average of 93. However, at the current pace, Fiji risks missing 75% of the 97 target that we could measure. And there are challenges that we have, including data collection and data analysis. Excellencies, as I speak before you today, the government of Fiji, through the Ministry of Finance, is conducting a nationwide public consultation on our new National Development Plan, or NDP. This is a crucial time for us as we endeavor in the next year with the aim
Please wrap up your statement.
We acknowledge the timeliness of a 2023 VNR and support that we have given its development and release, which will allow us to ensure consideration in the formulation of a new NDP. And Excellency, the focus is now on the next 6 years, the sprint from now until 2030, and we look forward to your continued support and strong partnership in working towards a better and safer future for our people and our planet, for Fiji and also for the Pacific Island countries. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Fiji. I now invite distinguished delegate from Indonesia to be followed by the distinguished delegate from Laos People's Democratic Republic.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as part of our commitments to the SDGs, in the past, Indonesia has submitted 3 voluntary national reviews in 2017, 2019, and 2021. Furthermore, in ensuring effective SDGs localizations, we have also encouraged our subnational governments to mainstream the 2030 agenda in their development planning and submit their voluntary local reviews, or VLR. Since 2021, a total of 2 subnational governments in Indonesia have submitted their VLRs, and 6 others are in the process of formulating their VLRs. I'm pleased to inform that currently my institutions, the Nusantara New Capital Authority, is in the process of submitting the VLR for Indonesia's new capital city, Nusantara. The new capital city of Nusantara is specifically designed to be green, smart, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. As such, the development of Nusantara will contribute to the attainment of the SDGs in Indonesia, particularly to the cities' surrounding area and communities. For Indonesia, formulating voluntary reviews such as this serve as an opportunity to both assess our SDG progress and also to share our experiences to the global community. Allow me to thus highlight 2 pertinent lessons that we learned throughout the process. First, the importance of multi-stakeholder partnerships in the attainment of the SDGs, and the SDGs can only be attained when all stakeholders are all actively involved. This includes the government and all non-state actors, such as the private sector, civil society, and development partners. We learned that encouraging multi-stakeholders cooperation cannot be taken for granted and have to be strategized. Second, the need to localize the SDGs. By localizing the SDGs, not only we synchronize global and national agenda, but we also provide an avenue for local governments to support the attainment of the SDGs through bottom-up approach. The SDGs also provide a strategic framework for local governments to advance sustainable development principles. In the case of Indonesia, we localize the SDG all the way to the village level. Excellencies, in closing, allow me to invite all delegates to the launch of the preliminary findings of VLR of the new capital Nusantara, which will be held tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. at the space ground floor. This will be followed by a side event on leveraging VLRs for a sustainable urban futures, which will be held in the theater room at 12:15 p.m. I look forward to welcoming you at these events. Thank you very much.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Indonesia. Now I would like to invite distinguished delegate from Lao People's Democratic Republic to be followed by the collective statement of APR SEM.
Mr. Chairs, Madam Executive Secretary, distinguished delegate, at the outset I would like to reaffirm the Lao government commitment to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in the remaining period of line with its development goal and objective. I would also like to share the view that we need to redouble our effort to accelerate the SDG implementation despite impact of COVID-19 and various challenges caused by different crises. Having recognized the importance of national ownership and the follow-up mechanism, it is indeed opportune time this year for the Lao PDR to embark on the voluntary national review for the 3rd time to assess and present its national progress made in implementing the SDG. It is also timely as the government has recently completing its midterm review of the 9th National Socio-Economic Development Plan, and together with the adoption of the Lao PDR's smooth transition strategy for LDC graduation. We view this VNR process as a vital platform to share our unique experience and valuable lesson learned from our endeavor to achieve the global sustainable development goal that align to our national development priority. Under the close guidance of the National Steering Committee, the SDG Secretary and officials kicked off the third VNR process in November 2023, and recently organized the multi-stakeholder VNR inception meeting to discuss the scope of priorities with the support and participation of the UN country team, ESCAP, and relevant partner. Taking into account our commitment to the principle of leaving no one behind, the third VNR is being developed through the series of consultation with different stakeholders at different levels, including a close collaboration with the UN agency, development partners, civil society, and private sector, among others. With that in mind, the focus of our third VNR center on three key aspects. First, reflecting the national implementation of the 2030 agenda and indicating steps to accelerate implementation. Second, considering where the country is in the national planning
Please
cycle
conclude your remarks.
and the alignment of national strategy and budget with the SDG. The third, highlighting the main challenges faced in implementing the SDG and providing strategy and way forward to overcome them. However, we will review the depth and of 11 SDG and align with the UN Secretary General 6 key transition. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Lao PDR. Now I invite representative from APR CM for collective statement to be followed by distinguished delegate from Uzbekistan.
Distinguished delegates, this is a collective statement of the People's Forum. We are representing the youth constituency. Inclusions and meaningful participations of the stakeholders, including youth, has always been an issue in the BNR process, leaving critical voices behind. It fails to galvanize multi-stakeholder partnership, especially civil society, meaningfully. The Asia-Pacific region is witnessing an alarming shrinking civic space situations, as the Civicus report recently exposed that civic space has shrunken in the 58% countries. Local governments are also advocating for their meaningful participations in the VNR processes. CSUs and the coalitions are also preparing their own reports by using tools such as People's Scorecard, Voluntary People's Review, Nepal and Sri Lanka, and other relevant tools such as Civil Society Spotlight reports. But these reports either have any space in the national mechanism nor in the UN systems. We call on all the member states of our regions to give priority to equity and justice in their reports. We urge to move the VNRs beyond the GDP growth narrative, prioritizing systems, barriers, and inequalities within and between countries. Member states must create a rightful civic space and policy environment for CSUs and young people's meaningful engagement and embrace the principle of data democracy by ensuring greater transparency and access to data used in VNR.
We call on member states to ensure localization of SDGs to ensure systemic and meaningful integration, encouraging the VLRs and build local governments' institutional capacity. VNR's process and the report must ensure meaningful inclusion of the marginalized people, strengthening the participation of poor, women, workers, farmers, indigenous peoples, LGBTIQ+ community, and other marginalized people across all phases of VNR process, to ensure that it is not merely tokenistic and that safe spaces for democratic engagement is ensured. There should be zero tolerance to reprisals. VNR reports should be developed through collaborative consultative process and not reports developed by consultants. Besides, the role of parliaments, NHRIs, Supreme Audit Office, and other oversight bodies should be encouraged in the VNR process. We call on member states to interlink human rights review progress and VNRs, integrating the civil society major groups and stakeholders' insights, covering the review of all the goals as suggested by UN's VNR guideline. Governments must consider gender equality, governance, and means of implementation as cross-cutting emphasis while reporting specific goals to ensure holistic insights into the country progress on sustainable development. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, representatives from APRSM. I recognize distinguished delegate from Uzbekistan to be followed by the distinguished delegate from Nepal.
Honorable delegates and distinguished colleagues, today I stand before you as the representative of Uzbekistan, a country committed to accelerating the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. It's an honor to address this esteemed gathering and share our progress in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Uzbekistan recognizes the significance of the 2030 Agenda and the transformative potential it holds for a country and the world. We firmly believe that the path of sustainable development lies in the effective implementation of national strategies and policies. That is why we have embraced the voluntary national review process as a means to assess our progress, identify challenges, and chart a course towards a better future. In this journey, Uzbekistan has already taken significant strides. We have successfully conducted 2 voluntary national reviews, the first in 2020 and the second in 2023. These reviews have provided us with invaluable insights into the areas where we have made remarkable progress and the areas that require further attention. Through our voluntary national reviews, we have showcased the efforts made by Uzbekistan in various sectors. We have strengthened our commitment to eradicating poverty, promoting inclusive and sustainable economic growth, and ensuring social well-being for all our citizens. We focus on enhancing education, healthcare, and gender equality, recognizing that these are fundamental pillars for achieving sustainable development. Moreover, Uzbekistan has prioritized environmental sustainability, taking significant steps towards mitigating climate change, preserving biodiversity, and promoting clean energy. We have also placed great emphasis on building resilient infrastructure and fostering innovation to drive economic growth and create opportunities for our people. During the high-level political week of the United Nations held in September last year, UN Secretary General Mr. Antonio Guterres noted that although the world community is in the middle of implementing the global agenda, only 15% of the goals have been achieved. Despite the challenging global situation regarding the achievement of the SDGs, Uzbekistan has already made significant strides by accomplishing 45% of the goals within this time frame. Furthermore, there is encouraging progress in 32% of the remaining 55%. However, we acknowledge that challenges persist on our path toward the 2030 Agenda. We are determined to address these challenges head-on, guided by the principles of transparency, inclusivity, and accountability. We will continue to engage stakeholders, including civil society organizations, the private sector, and international partners to ensure a collaborative approach in achieving our sustainable development goals. In conclusion, Uzbekistan remains steadfast in its commitment to accelerating the implementation of the 2030 Agenda through voluntary national reviews. We are proud of the progress we have made, as showcased in our 2 VNRs. Together, let us forge ahead, united in our pursuit of a more sustainable and prosperous future for all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Uzbekistan. Now I invite distinguished delegate from Nepal to be followed by representative from local authorities, major group, Asia Pacific, local government coordinating body.
Mr. Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor. After successfully presenting Nepal's national review in 2017 and 2020, Nepal is all set to present its 3rd VNR at this year's high-level political forum on sustainable development. Excellencies, we believe VNR are crucial for ensuring accountability towards the sustainable development goals, and we must utilize it as an avenue for identifying areas that require urgent attention and intervention. Our first VNR in 2017 provided an update on the SDG mainstreaming and implementation in Nepal. While the second VNR in 2020 included good practices and initiatives undertaken by the government. The third VNR report aims to be a visionary strategic plan looking ahead to the next 6 years, as we have to do a lot to achieve SDG targets. I'm sure it will provide deeper analysis of the root causes of challenges that government has experienced and will help us to advance our capacity to enact and measure progress towards the 2030 agenda. So in addition to the regular contents or formats recommended by the Secretary General's Voluntary Common Reporting Guidelines for VNR, the third VNR will focus additional thematic areas, or in other words, our national priority areas, including a decent job and social protection, food system transformation, transformation of health and education, ensuring gender equality, eco-friendly cities, climate action, and a national integrated data management system. Further, the localization of SDG will be emphasized through including our sub-national governments in the VNR process. We have 7 provincial governments and 753 local governments in Nepal. The third VNR will provide space for BSR and VLR as well. So far, our 16 local governments have already concluded their VLR, and hopefully some additional local governments will conclude their VLR before the VNR 2024 submission deadline. I'm sure it will help us to localize the SDG agenda and implement the National Development Plan effectively. This is the year we are drafting our 16th National Development Plan, so it is being easy for us to ensure close coherence between VNR and the National Development Plan. All the priority areas being highlighted in the VNR will be included in the National Development Plan as well, with detailed interventions, programs, and expected results. Additionally, Nepal is aligning the VNR with its LDC graduation smooth transition strategy, as it is set to graduate from the LDC status in 2026. We believe VNR 2024 will be an important milestone to accelerate the implementation of SDGs in Nepal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Nepal. I now recognize representative from local authorities, major group, Asia Pacific Local Government Coordinating Body, to be followed by the distinguished delegate from Republic of Korea.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. The opportunity to take the floor. I am Ashok Byanju, Mayor of Dhulikhel Municipality, Nepal. I speak on behalf of the organization, constitutions of the local authority representative of the Asia Pacific Local Government Coordinating Body. Local and regional government have been conducting bottom-up reporting on the SDG thought the voluntary sub-national review and the voluntary local review. In Asia Pacific, there have been 7 VLR published from 2020 to 2023. In the Cambodia, Indonesia, state of Selangor, Nepal, Pakistan, Philippines, Sri Lanka, there have been 53 VLR published from the 2017 to 2023 with 7 local government, having done at least 2 VLR in 2022. My municipality, Dhulikhel municipality, is published the very first VLR in Nepal. The VSR and the VLR are tangible indications of the community to the SDG and can provide local reality and national reporting on the SDG. We urge national government to explore how the voluntary sub-national review and the voluntary local review can be harmonized with the voluntary national review to the enhance multiple dialogue and policy coherence on the SDG. We acknowledge ESCAP and the Penang platform for the sustainable urbanization for developing the Asia Pacific regional guideline on the VLRs. National level guidelines on VLRs have also been created the Indonesia and Malaysia, more local and the regional government want to develop VLR and BSR. Those are clear recognition on the value of VLR. We call on the national government to support local and regional government as well, undertaken the voluntary sub-national review and the voluntary local review and integrated them in our planning process. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, distinguished representative of local authorities. Now I recognize distinguished delegate from Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished delegate and ladies and gentlemen, Korea presented the first review back in the 2016. And the review gave us a great opportunity to identify areas where we have to focus on to ensure sustainability. Drawing on our experience, I would like to make 3 points. First, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of multi-stakeholder partnership for the effective implementation of SDG, which cover a wide range of economic and social environmental dimension. After BNR, my government invented a monitoring mechanism for Korea SDG implementation in partnership with the civil society and academia. Korea also enacted the Framework Act on Sustainable Development to improve its national SDG implementation system. Second, as Korea enacted the act, we need to institutionalize our multi-stakeholder partnership that will allow the voices of vulnerable groups to be heard systematically. The institution we are creating will help translating their voices into law-based policies. To this end, we need to invigorate our engagement with National Assembly or Congress representatives, because they are making the legal foundation or frameworks that institutionalize SDG implementation in various fields. Third, evidence-based monitoring. According to this year's Asia-Pacific SDG Progress Report, only 52% of the indicators were sufficient for the measurement. It is concerning that data availability is very low. We need to discuss collective ways to overcome such a limitation. In this regard, Korea will remain reliable partner in building the region's capacity through its capacity building program. And we wish to keep sharing our stories and lessons learned with our neighbors in this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Republic of Korea. I recognize a distinguished delegate from Armenia to be followed by distinguished delegate from China.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Republic of Armenia is a strong advocate of sustainable development goals and their effective implementation. For us, this is a crucial commitment to make real and tangible changes for the present and future generations. In fact, the government of Armenia designs many of its reforms based on the goals and actions of the SDGs. That is why the Republic of Armenia is committed to effectively implement the SDGs and share its experience throughout the VNRs. The best exhibit of this is the fact that regardless of the current challenging period, Armenia has decided to present its third voluntary national review during this year's HLPF. As we have embarked on the active preparatory process of the third VNR, it is important to mention that this is going to be the most inclusive and participatory VNR of Armenia, with the engagement of multiple stakeholders from the parliament, grassroots organizations, civil society, youth representatives, academia, private sector, and media. While the COVID-19 pandemic has greatly impaired the possibility of having similar results during the previous VNR. We have already had initial stakeholder consultations, and soon we will start rounds of large-scale consultation with full-fledged participation of different stakeholders, with the last round serving as a platform for validation of the results of the VNR. Why is this so important for us? Because we believe that the successful implementation of the SDGs requires multi-stakeholder ownership and commitment. Chair, Armenia's third VNR will tell the most recent story of Armenia, with its challenges, difficulties, but also achievements and aspirations for development and for lasting peace and stability in our region. This will not be an SDG-driven VNR, rather a story-based VNR, which will tell the story of a small, landlocked developing country, which within the last 3 to 4 years had to face unparalleled challenges and threats due to the COVID-19 pandemic, a major war, coercion, and unprecedented influx of more than 108,000 forcibly displaced refugees from Nagorno-Karabakh just a few months ago. At the same time, this will be a story of resilience, belief, and determination to deliver on its commitments towards the attainment of the SDGs and build the necessary foundations for the development and prosperity of the current and future generations, based on the firm bedrock of democracy, human rights, rule of law, and strong and resilient institutions. While Armenia is taking a whole of society approach in this third VNR, we believe that this process and its outcomes will serve as a major impetus for the policy coherence to ensure that all levels of the government and the society are aligned to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, while feeding into the upcoming national policy making and planning processes, such as the development of the new UN SDCF for Armenia. I thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Armenia. Now I invite distinguished delegate from China to be followed by representative of APR-SEM LGBTQI/TIQ constituency.
The LGBTI constituency.
尊敬的主席先生，中国始终坚持发展是第一要务，将可持续发展作为基本国策。我们强化战略对接，立足本国国情，提出了创新、协调、绿色、开放、共享的新发展理念，将落实2030年议程同执行国家中长期发展战略相衔接，将可持续发展目标转化为经济、社会、环境等各领域的具体任务。我们出台了科技创新、农业、应对气候变化等各领域的发展规划，并每年进行落实进展的评估。我们完善机制建设，成立了由外交部牵头40多个部门参与的协调工作机制，负责制定整体的落实方案，审议落实进展情况。同时，明确各级政府的主体责任，促进私营部门、民间团体、学界智库等多利益攸关方的参与，形成全社会共同推进可持续发展的强大合力。我们打造数据支撑，成立了可持续发展大数据国际研究中心，建设可持续发展目标大数据平台，向全球提供一站式的数据计算、分析、展示、共享服务。自2019年起，连续5年发布地球大数据支撑可持续发展目标报告，向联合国赠送全球水资源数据产品，为落实2030年议程提供数据支撑。我们深化国际合作，发布了4期中国落实2030年可持续发展议程进展报告，2次提交落实2030年议程国别自愿陈述。本着开放包容的态度，同各国分享落实经验，我们通过“一带一路”和全球发展倡议等全球公共产品，为其他发展中国家落实议程提供力所能及的帮助，助力全球早日实现可持续发展目标。中方将继续本着负责任和建设性态度，参与2030年议程的落实和审议进程，愿同亚太各国加强经验交流和务实合作，为区域落实2030年议程做出更大贡献。谢谢。
Thank you, distinguished delegate from China. I invite representative of APR-CM LGBTIQ constituency to be followed by distinguished delegate from Azerbaijan.
The LGBTI constituency of APRCM appreciates that the SDG must be centered around the demands of one furthest behind, including LGBTIQ people, whose development concern cut across goal, target, and indicators and other binding human rights treaties. Government must be accountable and responsible to acts that address SOGIEC human rights issue in the SDG nationalization plan, ensuring no one is left behind the sustainable development, policy design, and implementation. We also express our demand for development justice and equitable multilateralism, centering the need of most marginalized community, including LGBTIQ people. The disproportionate economic and social marginalization of LGBTIQ individuals across Asia Pacific, driven by the variety form of oppression stemming from colonial legal criminalization, discrimination in the world of work, and bullying by expenditure, bullying and in educational setting. International financial institution of conditionality, military conflicts and expenditure, and anti-rights and anti-gender fundamentalist movements contribute to the decentralization of institutions responsible for service provision and the lack of income in social protection, impoverishment, and the displacement of LGBTIQ individuals. LGBTIQ asylum seekers and migrants suffer from the lack of access to health, social protection, and justice. For this reason, we reiterate that in SDG follow-up and review mechanism at all levels, duty-bearer entities and governments are responsible to connect active outreach and meaningfully include LGBTIQ organizations and individuals, especially those who are further marginalized, to ensure their development needs and policy solutions are taken to account, particularly during VNR Constitution. Recommendation to State Member. Active outreach and meaningful inclusion of LGBTIQ organizations and their development demands in National Sustainable Development Follow and Review Process. Partners in LGBTIQ CSOs to enhance the collection of disaggregated data based on SOGIEC and integrate qualitative method of diverse lived realities, ensuring meaningful LGBTIQ community participation. Implement privacy measures to prevent misuse, safeguarding confidentiality, and addressing unique challenges in SDG implementation. Develop and implement anti-discrimination laws and policy to protect the equal rights of LGBTIQ people, as well as decolonize the legal framework by repealing discriminatory and punitive law, policy, and social practices that undergird violence and discrimination on the basis of SOGIEC, as well as human rights defenders and CSOs. In the military expenses and ensure full public investment in universal health coverage and access to high-quality public service, social welfare, and protection that are able to meet the unique needs of LGBTIQ individuals. Ensure decent work, living wage, fair compensation, rights to decision-making, and collective bargaining and unionization of LGBTIQ workers and migrants in the world of work by ratifying relevant ILO conventions, especially C-190. I thank you.
Thank you. I now invite distinguished delegate from Azerbaijan to be followed by distinguished delegate from Solomon Island.
Thank you, Chair. Building opportunity for inclusive and sustainable economic growth for all while ensuring that no one is left behind, this stands the highest priority for the government of Azerbaijan. Our nation has exhibited a statehood commitment to transition towards sustainable development, and our national development strategy was a sustainable development goals. As we navigate through the challenges posed by the global pandemic and recent conflicts in the region, Azerbaijan stands at a pivotal juncture in its development trajectory. Over the next decade, spanning from 2021 to 2030, we are dedicated to charting a path towards social, economic, environmental progress through 5 key national priorities determined by presidential decree. This is steadily growing competitive economy, society founded on dynamism, inclusivity, and social justice, competitive human capital and fostering space for modern innovation, great return to liberated territories, and clean environment and green growth country. Azerbaijan has taken significant strides to enhance sustainable financing, including development of integrated national financing framework, we call it INFF roadmap, and SDG investor mapping. Through sector-specific strategies, plan and sustainable finance roadmap, we are actively integrating environmental, social, and governance ESG factors into the financial sector, thus aligning our financial decision with more sustainable and green development goals. Central to our efforts is a commitment to revive the Karabakh and Eastern Zengizur economic region, which have endured decades of conflict, displacement, and destruction. Our holistic approach to post-conflict recovery aims to rebuild infrastructure, improve living conditions, and create an environment conducive to sustainable development and lasting peace in the region. The creation of net zero emission and green energy zone in liberated territories underscore our dedication to biodiversity preservation, climate action, and land degradation mitigation. As we strive towards sustainable and lasting development, Azerbaijan has officially declared mine action as an 18th national SDG. Collaborating with international partners, including UN, EU, and World Bank, we're actively engaged in demining efforts to ensure safety and security to our returning population. Azerbaijan has proposed the establishment of like-minded group of mine-affected countries under non-alignment movement, demonstrating our commitment to global humanitarian efforts. In conclusion, Azerbaijan remains steadfast in its commitment to sustainable development, economic prosperity, and regional stability. Through collective action and unwavering determination, we are poised to realize our vision, just, equitable, and inclusive future follow. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Azerbaijan. I invite distinguished delegate from Solomon Island to be followed by representative of APRSM, Indigenous Peoples Constituency.
Thank you, Chair. Solomon Islands, as a member state of the UN ESCAP, we are privileged to also present our statement. The government of Solomon Islands, through the VNR, has been able to implement it at the national level through the National Development Strategy, which is currently under review. And through this process, we are enforcing the realization of the gaps and the targets that we would be able to accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. In this regard, we are also looking towards enhancing the policy coherence in terms of localizing the SDG through the integration, the alignment, and contextualizing this international agenda through the sector development plans, the provincial development plans, and the community and world development plans throughout the country. As the country is, will be also graduating in 2027, the VNR process will also contribute in enhancing the preparation of this smooth transition strategy that will be able to provide the country with a roadmap in terms of post-graduation, pre-graduation, and also in terms of accelerating the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Though we have been able to progress at least 2 of the SDGs as recorded and presented in the previous VNR, we are looking, there has been some progress in terms of strengthening the monitoring and evaluation, and also in terms of data collection by conducting an M&E ecosystem diagnostic study in the country. With that, the country looks forward to strengthen its M&E system across the country. And there has been a development of a male strengthening strategy that should provide a guide and also should provide the framework and the platform for the country to be able to enhance the capacity in terms of male within the public sector, but also across the stakeholders and down to the local level and community levels. Data, as all the participants and the delegates have been alluded to, is a significant resource, and the government of Solomon Islands also see the significance of data and evidence-based planning, and also evidence-based
Time to conclude, Madam.
informed decision-making. With that, I will call upon all our partners to continue to collaborate with the government to move forward the SDGs implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Solomon Island. Now I invite a representative of APR-SEM, Indigenous Peoples Constituency, to be followed by Vietnam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the discussions earlier, indeed, reliable and robust disaggregated data, especially on ethnicity, disability, and other characteristics are very much needed in this very diverse region to ensure that development is tailored to the specific needs and priorities of the different sectors of the society. Beyond the data, though, the recognition of the contributions to achieving sustainable development and challenges faced by the civil society and marginalized sectors is lacking in the follow-up and review process. The major groups and other stakeholders, or MGOs, at the global level, the coordination mechanism of civil society and other stakeholders engaging in the SDG, of which APR-SEM is also a part of, has a BNR task group that has been coordinating and facilitating the drafting of civil society statements and the meaningful participation of civil society in the BNR process at the global level. Now, in the many years that we have been involved in the MGOS BNR task group, we put forward the following reflections and recommendations. Most importantly, one is on putting to action the pledge of leaving no one behind and reaching the furthest behind. Let this pledge not just end up as a lip service. On this, political will is needed, including allocation of sufficient resources in strengthening data disaggregation to inform targeted policies and programs for the marginalized sectors. Second, we hear that there is a need to expand the review process to not just be a national review process, but also to localize review process and include review processes and reports that are being conducted by the civil society and the people. There are a lot of data and reports coming out from the civil society and initiatives from communities that needs to be integrated into this overall SDG review process. The inclusion of citizen-generated data in the VNR and the SDG progress reports is also very important. For Indigenous peoples, there are a number of initiatives that we are implementing to generate our own data. There's the Indigenous Navigator Initiative. And there's also the community-based monitoring and information systems that's being implemented by Indigenous peoples to gather, generate their own data, and also analyze their own data in relation not only to the implementation of the SDGs, but also of the general human rights obligations of states. We need to make the VNRs more grounded. Most often, reports from states does not fully reflect what is happening on the ground, which is what is contained in many civil society reports and collaborative statements. Finally, the achievement of the 2030 Agenda can only be realized in an inclusive and development justice framework. We hope that in this review process, the people will also be given the voice, will also be given the space to decide and report on the progress of the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of APR-SEM, Indigenous Peoples Constituency. I now invite distinguished delegate from Vietnam to be followed by distinguished delegate from Timor-Leste.
Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the VNR play a vital role in the monitoring and implementation of the SDG. It also facilitates the sharing of experience, including success, challenges, and lessons learned with the international community. Understanding this important, Vietnam has twice presented the Vienna in 2018 and 2023. We have developed our Vienna through a combination of different scientific methods, as well as by engaging the entire political system, NGOs, development partners, the United Nations, the business community, research institute, and scientists. Throughout 10 steps of building the Vienna, we have a consult with all the relevant stakeholders to ensure that all voices are heard and nobody gets left behind. We also receive extensive support from ESCAP in tracking SDG progress presented in the Vienna 2023. The Vienna has helped Vietnam in analyzing the SDG progress, as well as difficulties and challenges in the SDG implementation. From this breakdown, the Vienna has proposed steps to accelerate SDG implementation, notably through increasing policy coherence for sustainable development at both national and subnational level, to ensuring that all levels of government are aligned in their efforts to achieve the SDG. For Vietnam, Vienna is not only a report, it is a process to promote SDG implementation and monitoring and enhance national capacity to fulfill the SDG in 2030. Since Vienna is an important tool for accelerating SDG implementation, we would like to recommend that ESCAP should further promote activity in supporting member states to develop and present Vienna at the annual HLPF, especially in data gathering and statistics analysis. I thank you for the kind attention.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Vietnam. Now I invite distinguished delegate from Timor-Leste, to be followed by distinguished delegate from Japan.
Mr. Chair, I wish to congratulate you, Mr. Chair, for your leadership and appreciating ESCAP to organizing the 11th Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. Timor-Leste, like many small island development states and least developed country, faces numerous development challenges: poverty, malnutrition, food insecurity, inequality, climate change, and other social and economic issues all threaten our sustainable future. It is through the implementation of the 2030 Agenda that we can address and ultimately overcome these challenges to create a better world for all by 2030. Accelerating the implementation of the 2030 SDGs agenda through VNRs require to concrete effort from all stakeholders. Timor-Leste has prioritized the SDGs through aligning our national strategic development plan with the SDGs. The result of our first and second VNRs have been used to support our priority setting and resource allocation decisions for our national policies and plan and budgets. We see the VNR as an essential part of our national monitoring and evaluation framework, and our experience in conducting the first VNR and second VNR has allowed us to identify our gaps, challenges, and opportunity and progress toward achieving the SDGs. Furthermore, the VNR promotes transparency, accountability, and stakeholder engagement as we engage with civil society, academia. This forum and HLPF provide the opportunity for us to share our experiences and challenges, and also to learn from other countries' experiences to progress the SDGs with leaving no one behind. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Timor-Leste. I invite distinguished delegate from Japan to be followed by distinguished delegate from Islamic Republic of Iran.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all distinguished delegation. Japan submitted our first biennial in 2017 and the second biennial in 2021. Since the achievement of the SDGs required the efforts of a wide range of stakeholders, the second biennial was prepared not only through discussion within the government, but through discussion at the SDGs Promotion Roundtable, which consists of representatives from various fields, discussion with the civil society and the youth generation, and through public comments in order to incorporate the opinions of a wide range of people. In addition, in order to evaluate our progress, we have included evaluations from the multi-stakeholders members of the SDGs Promotion Roundtable, considering that it would be desirable to include evaluations from progress from other perspectives other than the government. The drafting process of the biennial provided us an opportunity to review the institution for promoting the SDGs and major initiatives, and to consider how Japan should promote the SDGs in the future. Therefore, based on the opinions of experts and citizens, the biennial concludes with a description of how Japan will promote initiatives to achieve the SDGs henceforth. In December last year, the SDGs Promotion Headquarters, which is led by Prime Minister, revised our national SDGs implementation guiding principles after the first revision in 2019. In the guiding principles, we expressed that Japan will conduct our third voluntary national review in 2025. At that time, Japan will present internationally how Japan is promoting the SDGs and our intention to lead efforts to ensure the sustainability of international community as a whole. While reviewing the progress of the SDGs in Japan, a cross-cutting review will also be conducted from the perspective that the SDGs as a whole are integral and indivisible. In doing so, the government will take full account of the needs to manage progress toward and achieve the SDGs based on scientific evidence. Through these efforts, Japan will also would like to take the lead in international discussion with a view to beyond 2030. In addition, with regard to local governments, those that propose outstanding initiatives to achieve the SDGs have been selected as SDG Future Cities since 2018, and leading model cases have been introduced throughout the country. In addition to SDG Future Cities, other initiatives such as the Public-Private Partnership Platform for Local SDGs and Local SDG Finance have created momentum to promote the SDGs and encourage every citizen to treat the SDG as their own concern. At this date, 5 local governments presented their VLR, and Japan will continue to strengthen cooperation with local governments and encourage them to actively conduct voluntary local reviews. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Japan. I recognize distinguished delegate from Islamic Republic of Iran to be followed by a representative of APR SEM, Urban Poor Constituency.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. Chairman, the Islamic Republic of Iran will continue its constructive cooperation to fulfill its commitments to global sustainable development goals and principles based on the national priorities and in conformity with its national legislations. Iran has contributed profoundly to the realization of SDGs within Iran. We intended to actively build on these achievements and committed to effective implementation of 2030 Agenda in a holistic and comprehensive manner. Iran is confident that the true partnership, cooperation, and solidarity commitments can be brought into actions yielding tangible results. In order to incorporate the SDGs into relevant national frameworks, the seventh National Development Plan, running from 2024 to 2029, was recently endorsed and approved by the Parliament. A strong link has been established between the 7th National Development Plan and the SDGs through supporting documents which have been incorporated into the development plan. In the recent decades, countries in the Middle East, including Iran, have not only encountered challenges such as land degradation, desertification, water scarcity, hotter climate conditions, sand and dust storms, but also they are grappling with the threat of terrorism and extremist violence. The result is that often, instead of focusing on ways to reverse poverty, environmental destruction, and development generally, governments are obliged to commit their limited national resources to fighting insecurity. Iran recognized the necessity of dialogue, cooperation, and partnership among peoples and the countries of the region. The Islamic Republic of Iran is committed, working with the responsible actors to restore sustainable peace and security in the region, in line with the goals 16 and 17 of the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Islamic Republic of Iran. Now I invite representative of APR-SEM Urban Poor Constituency to be followed by representative of Food and Agriculture Organization.
Thank you. For the longest time, the urban poor have been excluded in the VNR processes and always just at the receiving end of these policies. Even with the civic spaces represented by these mechanisms, the urban poor are often left unheard. There is a huge disconnect between what is being reported on the VNRs and the actual conditions of the people. The policies that are being passed based on these reports do not help the people, but instead put the burden on them, especially the vulnerable sector like urban poor. When we talk about data gaps, we should also consider qualitative data. The people-initiated data gathering processes should be included in the final VNR reports. The government is missing a lot when they are not engaging with civil society. We bear the brunt of this failed system, and therefore we are in the best position to identify our solutions and recommendations. Some unseen injustices such as attack on civic freedoms, land grabbing impacting indigenous peoples and small farmers, evictions and demolitions of urban poor communities, environmental crimes, financial crimes are not being reported. Governments tend to report only progress on socioeconomic targets. Equity-related issues and challenges are unreported in the VNR reports. The member states must actively seek out and support the participation of the people, especially the marginalized, including women, girls, and gender-diverse people in all aspects of development processes. In the creation, implementation, monitoring, follow-up, and evaluation of policies and programs. This also includes establishing and maintaining institutionalized spaces at all levels, from local to global, where we can effectively participate. We need to adopt a genuinely rights-based, people-centered development framework. The SDG implementation must be guided by a people-centered and human rights-based development framework to address the decades-long problem of market-driven, profit-biased neoliberal development that hinders the eradication of poverty, inequalities, and discrimination. Let not just do things because we have targets that need to be met. These reports are not just data to be printed and to be looked at, but these are actual struggles of the people that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished representative of APR-SEM Urban Poor Constituency. Now I invite representative of Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As the principal United Nations specialized agency tasked with overseeing food security and serving as the custodian of 21 SDG indicators, while also contributing to an additional 5, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations undertakes a pivotal role in the local, regional, and global follow-up and review of the 2030 Agenda. In 2023, FAO launched a support package for VNRs and supports countries to prepare reports, providing dedicated engagement with national and regional partners and key stakeholders. In the Asia and the Pacific region, we provide this support in direct coordination and collaboration with our colleagues in ESCAP. The FAO Office of Sustainable Development Goals has developed a tailored toolkit to support this process. The toolkit includes a guidance note with timelines and roadmaps, a series of webinars, capacity building activities, as well context-based consultations and support for the post-review action plans. FAO has extended support to 23 of the VNR countries, which have a FAO representation, and in coordination with country offices, provided direct support in this region, for example, in countries like Timor-Leste and Fiji. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, distinguished representative of FAO. I see that there are no more delegations who wish to take the floor. I now close this agenda item. Thank you for all your contribution for an excellent segment. This afternoon, we shall convene the meeting at 13:30 hours with parallel SDG roundtable discussions, specifically on Goal 1, 2, and 17. Tomorrow, the SDG roundtable discussions will be on Goal 13 and 16. Complete SDG profiles for each goal are available on the APFSD website. The forum will resume in plenary tomorrow in the afternoon at 13:30 hours in the ESCAP hall with agenda item 4. There are a number of side events during the lunch break which you may be interested in attending. Please kindly refer to the list of side events, including their registration details that have been posted on the forum website. I would now like to invite the secretary to make some housekeeping announcements.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, as you just mentioned, we will have from 1:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. roundtables. You can see up here where these will be meeting. Roundtable on SDG 1 will be meeting in meeting room A, SDG 2, meeting room G, and SDG 17 today in meeting room H. Tomorrow we'll have roundtables on SDG 13 in A and 16 in meeting room G. Also, as you mentioned, we have a series of events taking place during the lunch break, hosted by different member states and UN entities and partners. Side events and the Climate Action Hub are also taking place. Finally, as mandated by the Commission, the Secretariat provides delegations with the opportunity to assess the results and quality of the session in a feedback questionnaire. We are only on day 2, but we will be putting up a QR code on the screen soon, and we would appreciate if at the end of this forum you would be able to give us some feedback on the forum so that we can improve our future forum and events. I hope you all have a pleasant lunch and are able to enjoy some interesting side events, and see you at the roundtables later. Thank you.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.